Welcome back to the Typhoon Legacy channel. Before I tell you what we're doing in this episode, I would like to thank Conrad from the Belgian branch of the 609 Squadron Association for this amazing shirt. You can see it's the Belgian branch right there. Fits perfectly. Thank you, Conrad. Really appreciate it. This episode is actually something that was intended to be an episode on mistakes, because you don't often see them on YouTube channels. Everything seems to go just swimmingly. However, there is a big bin of parts over there that have failed in my construction of the monocoque. And I wanted to show you something that we're dealing with right now that has been the subject of a lot of stress for me, I guess. And that is frame B. The lower section of frame B we had wasn't fitting quite right, and I know I'd said that we hadn't had to put any shims in because our design was so flawless, but the bottom of frame B, I did find an area that we needed shims, and I decided to remake it. In going to film what I was doing with that, I dropped this camera, broke the lens off, and had to have it repaired. And then again, I went to film it with our GoPro that we used to use many years ago, and my audio didn't work out well. So this is my final attempt at this video. I'm gonna have to hodgepodge some of this stuff together, but I wanna show you what we're doing with that frame B issue. In a lot of the videos I talk about the frames being quarter sections, and this is the actual section that I had a problem with. This is the lower quarter section of frame B, right towards the front of the monocoque section, immediately behind frame A. And a heavier construction. This one's 50 thou thick. And basically what the issue was is these tabs all go down to the skin, and there is some gaps in there that I wasn't comfortable with, and I don't want to put a bunch of shims in this thing because it's just not the way I want to work. So I decided that the best route forwards was going to be to actually make a new one of these. And I tried a couple different things. I failed a couple times doing it. Partially because I was out of practice. I haven't done this for quite some time, since we were making all the frames when all my procedures were fluid. But also partially because I blew an edge distance on one. So I went to make one of these, and I used the existing form block. Had only made two before, so the form block wasn't really too much of an issue, and I boosted the sections where these tabs are by the measurement that I took with feeler gauges on the structure. And that worked, I guess, fairly well. It was a bit of a shortcut in trying to get that done. But on that piece, I was fitting it, and I actually cut one of the tabs too short and blew the edge distance on the hole. And at that point, I was just not going to keep that part. So I did another one. And again, it didn't work out forming-wise. It just wasn't fitting the way that I wanted to. So essentially what I've had to do is go back to square one, and all of the form blocks, all of the work that we did on that, I'm scrapping it, and we're starting again from scratch. Now, at the time of filming this that you're seeing, I've already done that work, so I'm gonna have to put some of the video in together. But the decision was made to take the measurements off the airframe. Now that we have everything in there, it's truly faired to where it needs to be. The idea of going back and redesigning it and lofting it in CAD, it just seemed like it was going to be a problem. A lot of work goes into that, and it wouldn't be as accurate as the real thing. Now, the form block for these, because of the shape of them, it's actually 3 different form blocks. So I had to remake 2 of them and part of the third one, but I was able to salvage the lower body support for the third part and just make the strip that runs along the back side and is bolted in to make sure that our flanges aren't bending out as I'm forming them. So the first step in creating the new form blocks is to capture the geometry that we have in the monocoque for that area. And I did that by just cutting out a template on the laser. This is a form block template, I think, from our original form block. Which is good. It still uses the tooling holes that we have here, so it locates this properly. I also then, you can see I've got tabs on it, so I'll flip it around. That's because I filmed this before. But I trimmed these down even more just to provide some clearance, and then created a whole bunch of tabs that would get glued on in position here. So of course it's not so easy that we can just deal with that outside edge. We also have to make sure that the inside edge of the frame follows the exact same contour. So because we've made changes to the outside, we also have to make changes to the inside. And not being a CAD file, it means manual layout. So what I did for that is I marked out a tracing from our template that we just made, and lofted using fish and a spline, just lofted through the gaps in there between those little tabs that we glued on. And then I was able to transfer the proper measurement over to the inside edge, where the inside mold line of the form block would be. Again, this ended up using fish and splines to properly loft that contour into position. Once that work was done, we basically had our inside mold line form block for the outer and inner flanges, and I could cut out the rough blanks. To form that, basically the J shape on the inside edge, it requires a special routed edge on these form blocks. So you can see here, it basically just cuts it back because it's such a narrow flange that goes on that. So this one I routed down. I don't think I've got video on it, but it was crucial to being able to complete that form block. With that layout now done, I was able to go ahead and cut the form blocks, radius them, and finish them correctly so that we can start bending metal. However, before we start bending metal, we also have to cut our flat pattern, which is the piece of material that's going to be used to form the part. To do this, I was able to use the exact same layout that we had for that and just project some lines to give us the proper flange length and bend allowance required to be able to form the part around these shapes. With the flat pattern laid out, I manually cut it out using our punch press and a Beverly shear, along with some other tools to get the rough blank done so that we can start forming. Forming was done exactly the way it has been in several other videos. I won't get too far into that, but it was done using basic tools, including a rivet gun with a nylon set that I like to use to make sure that everything is just tucked in there nice and neatly. So it's all mounted up in the other backing block now with that inside lip on it, and you can just see that flange sticking out there. And it's got to be bent over again. So I use this. It's UHMW plastic. I've got a bunch of it kicking around the shop, and every time I need a special punch, I just hack one out of it. But it does a really good job at transferring force, not stretching too much in terms of compression when you're hammering, and it's cheap. So I'm just going to grab that lip with the edge of this, and that'll allow me to knock that over. Same thing, I'm going to go through this entire thing aggressively stretching it, trying to knock it all the way over so it stretches in that little area there, and then we'll take it out and see what we've got. So everything's trimmed and formed on the stretch flange on the inside there, and now I've got it set up so that we can use that new outside profile form block and backing block and do the outer shrink flange. Okay, just like that, everything's trimmed up nicely, deburred, and ready to go off to heat treatment. There's a little bit more to do. You can see in that center one. That's where the heavy stiffeners run, so that's going to get trimmed out a little bit more later. But right now, everything's been fit and has solved all of the issues that I had with that frame. That little fix took way too much time, and I really should have just gone back to square one and redone the forms in the first place, but it's hard to know when you get into a situation like that. I am very happy that it's done now, and I can start to move on to other aspects of the monocoque. And the list of those little projects is dwindling as well. So I've got a bunch of holes to drill, a little bit more work to do in the front end ring, but I'm going to save that until the parts come back from heat treatment. So in the meantime, that's it for this episode. However, we've got another one in the works that is not on the monocoque. It'll be pretty exciting. It involves a couple different, a third and a fourth party, and it'll be filmed off-site. So I look forward to getting that one done and out to you guys as well. Until next time, please consider subscribing to our subscriber channel. It really does make a big difference for us. And thank you very much for following along. Take care, guys.